On October 24, 2023, Nica opened a gate she had been told never to open alone. Nobody knows exactly what happened next. What they found was a locked padlock that should have stopped her, and a bear that wouldn't let her leave. The Băneasa Bear Sanctuary sat on the edge of a Romanian forest just outside Bucharest. For years it had been a refuge, a place where bears rescued from roadside cages and traveling circuses could live out their days. But it was also a place where safety protocols were routinely bent, and warnings were worn thin from being ignored. Mădălina was 45 years old and had worked at the sanctuary for years. She knew every bear by name, by temperament, by sound. She had helped raise some of them from cubs. The work was underpaid and unglamorous, but to Mădălina it was a calling, something that mattered. Milu was 12 years old, a male Carpathian brown bear who had lived his entire life in captivity. He weighed close to 250 kilograms. Sanctuary staff had bottle-fed him as a cub, and somewhere along the way, that history of closeness had become dangerous familiarity. Milu did not know he was a predator. He knew only that humans had always been there. The sanctuary had a documented history of incidents. Staff had been scratched, lunged at, cornered by bears. The director had issued formal warnings, including to Mădălina, about entering enclosures alone and without proper safety protocols. But the warnings had become background noise. Mădălina had a pattern. She would go in alone when the bear was calm, just to feed it, just to check on it, just for a few minutes. Younger staff watched her do this. Some tried to object. Mădălina would smile and reassure them. She knew Milu. She had raised him. Nothing would happen. On the morning of October 24, 2023, Mădălina arrived for her shift like any other day. The weather was cool and damp. Milu was in his enclosure. Everything was routine. Mădălina unlocked the padlock. She had been told, explicitly and repeatedly, that she should never enter a bear enclosure alone without backup, without a protocol checklist, without someone watching from outside. But Mădălina had done this 100 times before without incident. This time would be different. Mădălina entered the enclosure. Milu was alert, watching her as she always did. She moved through her routine, checking food and water, checking his condition. Milu approached her. This was normal. This had always been normal. In the space of seconds, Milu's behavior changed. Whether from a shift in his mood, a misread signal, a trigger in his animal brain that captivity had never erased, nobody will ever know. What witnesses heard was a sound. What they saw when they reached the enclosure was that Mădălina was no longer standing. Her colleagues immediately called for emergency services. Firefighters and emergency responders arrived within minutes, but protocol was clear. They could not enter while the bear was present without risk to themselves. Milu had not abandoned Mădălina. He was still with her. A tranquilizer was prepared and administered. Milu's massive body gradually became still. Only then could emergency responders enter the enclosure. What they found was Mădălina, 45 years old, who had spent 15 minutes alone with a bear she thought she knew. The bear had killed her. The incident triggered an immediate investigation by Romanian authorities. DG24, ProTV, and Antena 3 reported extensively on the tragedy. The investigation found exactly what staff had always known, that Băneasa had routinely violated its own safety protocols, that warnings had been issued and ignored, and that Mădălina's decision to enter the enclosure alone was against explicit sanctuary rules. Why did Mădălina do it? The answer may be as simple as love becoming blindness. She had raised Milu from a cub. She had held him and fed him and spoken to him. But a bear raised by humans is still a bear. An animal with 500 times the strength of a human, with instincts that captivity cannot erase, with a capacity for violence that no amount of familiarity can change. But Băneasa Bear Sanctuary continued operating. Safety protocols were reviewed and tightened. Milu was moved to a separate facility where he lives to this day. Mădălina was buried in Romania. Her death was not the fault of the bear. It was the consequence of a system that had allowed danger to become routine, and routine to become fatal. This is the story of Mădălina, a woman who loved the animals she cared for more than she feared what they could do. If you believe that wildlife deserves respect, that safety protocols exist for a reason, and that love is not a substitute for caution, please like and follow this page. We tell the true stories that change how we see the world.